We're just days away from the biggest boxing match in Australia in 2020. I'm Brendan Bradford from Sporting News, joined by Ben Damon, main event commentator and boxing journo. How are you?
Very well, yeah. We're only days away, as you mentioned, from the biggest fight in Australia, but the biggest fight on the planet just about this year, because finally a big crowd can get to a boxing event. They'll have 16 or so thousand there and it will be sold out. We'll have plenty watching via main event as well.
Can you put into perspective how big this fight is? We got Jeff Horn versus Tim Tszyu. Where does it sort of fit in the landscape of domestic Australian boxing?
Well, right now, this is the biggest fight that can be made in Australia. The two biggest names, we've got the existing superstar in Jeff Horn. Of course, he's been there and done that, a former world champion who beat Manny Pacquiao in front of 50,000 at Suncorp Stadium. So we know just how tough and how successful Jeff Horn has been, becoming a superstar here in Australia, particularly in Queensland. And Jeff Horn now takes on Tim Tszyu, who's the emerging star, such a famous surname in Tszyu. His dad was an absolute legend, and we've seen in the early stages, the first 15 fights of Tim Tszyu's career, that he has all the ingredients to be a superstar of his own right. So he's got all those skills, he's got the ability. Now we get to see him tested against a truly world-class opponent. So yeah, it's a massive fight on the Australian sporting landscape. It gives us the biggest star in the sport, certainly, with whoever wins it, and it'll do massive things for the sport in this country as well, because so many people are going to be watching it, and it's going to be a great spectacle.
And it's come at the perfect time for both these guys. Jeff Horn, like you say, he's been to the top of the world, former world champion. Tim Tszyu is the rising star, the young hungry lion, as he likes to say. It's the perfect meeting for these two guys, perfect time for it.
It's the perfect time for all of us, because 2020 has been a washout, hasn't it? We haven't had the big boxing events that we have desperately needed, when 2019 was such a great year and the start of this year was really good as well. So yeah, everyone's really waiting for this fight. You're exactly right. We see one guy who has been a world champion before, one who is on the rise, and we get to match them up and see where they're both at. Has Jeff Horn taken too many shots in his recent fights, in those two huge wars that we saw against Michael Zarafa, the second of which we will never forget? Whereas Tim Tszyu, we just don't know if he's quite ready for this. We know that he has boxing brilliance running through his veins. We know that he is very, very skillful. He's a superstar in the making, but is he ready for this? Is he ready to go to war with someone who loves that? Jeff Horn, he likes getting punched in the face. He wants to be cut and bloodied. He wants you to come on towards him because he wants to show you how tough he is. Outside the ring, he doesn't have that sort of aura to him, but when he gets in there, he just is desperate for a battle. Tim Tszyu hasn't had one yet. He's just demolished the vast majority of his opponents. Dwight Ritchie gave him a really good fight, but he managed to get through that one and outbox him and look really good in doing so. He bashed up Jack Brubaker, the very tough Jack Brubaker, last time out, but this is a whole new ball game. This is Jeff Horn, who wants to be in front of you and wants that war. So we get to line them up. We get to find out who's the best of the lot in Australia at the moment.
We saw this fight was initially announced back in March, or back in early this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID put a stop to everything. Back then, they were quite friendly. They were quite respectful of each other.
Too friendly, I thought.
100%. It was going to be a little bit of a flat build-up, but over the last probably month or so, we've seen a bit of tension coming into the two camps. What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, we've done 3 announcements for this fight. We did the first of them in Sydney when we just announced that this fight would be taking place. We signed the contract that very day, and yeah, they were very, very friendly that day. Afterwards, we were doing a little bit of publicity stuff, and they were sort of chatting to each other about other fights and about this and that, and I thought, I don't like this very much. If you two could sort of just separate or go at each other, that'd be great. By the time we got to the second announcement to announce the venue in Townsville, when we had a date of April 22 at that stage, yeah, there was a little bit more emotion starting to come in, but certainly a lot of respect and no one having a go at each other. But the most recent announcement for the new date in Townsville, they were really ready to go, because there's a feeling from the Horn camp that Tim Tszyu and his team have become a bit arrogant in the process. There's a feeling from the Tszyu camp that Jeff Horn has a bit of entitlement about him, and perhaps he's overstayed his welcome. So they've started to go at each other. Jeff Horn really pushing that line that Tim Tszyu is only there because of his surname, which everyone's going to say and he doesn't like, and of course he doesn't. Whereas Tim Tszyu is just trying to say, I don't care about anything you say. I know where I'm headed and I know what I'm going to do to you. So you're exactly right. There's a lot of feeling now. It's getting pretty messy, in fact, over the last few days, and they're really starting to go at each other, and you'd expect it would, because everything is on the line here. This is one of those fights where the loser drops back a long way. The winner goes on to probably a world title fight next. So yeah, there's a lot of feeling, and I think it'll really heat up through fight week. And then when we get to centre ring, we're going to see fireworks.
as you touched on before, there's a lot of people saying it's too early for Tim. He's never faced someone like Jeff, but this will be his 16th fight. I think Jeff fought Pacquiao in his 17th fight.
Yeah.
Is there an argument there?
There is, and Tim admits that he's taken a bit of inspiration from what Jeff Horn did in that Pacquiao build-up, because they made a plan as well. They made a 3 or 4 fight plan and said at the end of it, there's a fight with Manny Pacquiao. The Zoo Camp, that's what they've done with Jeff Horn. They've said at the end of this little process, we're going to get to Jeff Horn. They've probably got there a bit quicker than we expected them to do. He only had 3 headline performances on Main Event before going into this Jeff Horn fight. So, yeah, there's a lot of similarities in what he's done. It's going to be a very different fight stylistically, I would have thought, because Tim's going to try and use his range and try and box rather than going to war, even though he is saying that he's happy to have a battle. But yeah, I just can't wait to see what happens when the fireworks begin, to see what Tim Tszyu is made of, because we know that he has all the class in the world and he is destined to be someone special if he gets through this fight. But how does he feel when he's covered in his blood and someone else's, and you're going into those late rounds against someone who's just going, okay, let's keep doing it?
Because Jeff's been there before, he's come through it. Oh, he comes through it sometimes. Sometimes he gets knocked out like Zerafa Crawford. But
yeah, and that's what Jeff Horn does. He overcomes everything. We've seen him in round 9 against Manny Pacquiao. He was gone, and he came back and he won that fight. He won the rest of the rounds and pulled off the most famous victory in the history of Australian boxing. We've seen him against Anthony Mundine when Mundine was trying to get in his head and had talked it right up, and obviously was a legend and still remains that of the sport, but he knocked him out in 96 seconds after they had to rush to the ring to beat the curfew. We saw him over there against Terence Crawford, a fight that really they shouldn't have taken at that stage, but they were so full of confidence they went over there against one of the pound-for-pound stars in the world, and he had a red-hot crack round 9 again. Lost to Michael Zerafa after taking it far too easily, and Michael Zerafa pulling off a fantastic career highlight performance. And then the rematch last time out when, well, who can believe what we saw even now, the punch from the gods that Jeff Horn pulled out in round 9 after being completely and utterly gone. The journey for Tim Tszyu hasn't been quite as dramatic. It's been a steady rise, and over the last year in particular, he's been heading towards this fight. Now he gets his chance, and now all of Australia gets to see if he is our next sporting superstar, because a victory in a fight like this doesn't just mean he's the best boxer in the country. He becomes a front page star. This is a massive fight. He's got all the ingredients, but now he has to go to war with someone who has been there before.
one of the other refrains, I suppose, from Jeff Horn has been the Kostya Tszyu factor, the fact that Tim may be getting by on his name a little bit. Do you think that gets under Tim's skin at all? Is he sick of hearing that? Because everyone said it. Yeah, everyone in his professional career.
And they're going to keep saying it. Well, he says he's not fazed by it at all. He said that Jack Brubaker didn't get under his skin, but I think that he did, because we saw a different Tim Tszyu in that fight. He had a lot of aggression, even at the weigh-in. He said, I'm going to knock the clown out. This time around, he's saying he's going to do Australia a favour and knock Jeff Horn out. So, yeah, I think he probably does get a little bit impacted by some of those things. Obviously, it's a sore point. If your dad was a superstar, you're going to start to think that people are going to judge you solely on that. You're going to get a little bit annoyed when they constantly bring it up, but he wants to work out of that shadow. He knows he's going to have to put up with that, and even if it is affecting him, I'd say he's going to use it as motivation in this fight.
You've obviously been in and around Jeff Horn. You've known him for a number of years now, obviously before the Pacquiao fight.
Yeah.
How have you seen this sort of movement over the last year or so? The public perception shifting away from Jeff Horn.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because people embraced Jeff Horn when he was the B-side of that promotion, the underdog against Manny Pacquiao. Everyone fell in behind him, and it was such an amazing year for him after that. He had that defence against Gary Corcoran in his next fight, and he confessed to have been enjoying the process a little bit too much. He went into his fight a little bit underdone. He still won it. But that was because there was just so much adulation, particularly in Queensland. But you're right, over the last probably year or so, it has turned a little bit against him. You just look through the social media comments and, well, he's always got them after that victory against Manny Pacquiao, because there's half a world who would like to think that that fight didn't happen, or that at least there was a robbery on the cards, which was certainly not the case. But he doesn't seem to mind the fact that people have turned on him a little bit. He says he's been bullied all his life. He's got that famous story of being a school kid, and that's what took him to Glenn Rushton's gym, and that's what made him a boxer. And he says, this is just a bit more bullying. I'm going to just overcome it as I always have. I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm going to use it as motivation, and I'm going to keep going forward. But for those of us who know Jeff Horn and Tim Tszyu so well, they're both such fantastic blokes. Jeff Horn is one of the nicest people you could meet in or outside of boxing. He is just a very normal, a little bit dorky, a bit of a nerdy sort of a fella. He likes to show you magic tricks and play Connect 4 on his phone with you and stuff like that. But at the same time, he doesn't mind getting in there with a bloke his own size or a bit bigger and throwing punches at them until one or the other is knocked out. So it's a strange contrast, a fascinating guy, but whether people are supporting him or against him, they're going to be watching this fight and he's going to be looking to make a serious statement.
Tim's going into this fight a big favourite. How do you see it going on Fight Night? Do you have a prediction for us?
Yeah, well, Tim is going a very, very big favourite into this fight. The betting markets went up early. They've stayed exactly that way throughout. I would only say that I'm surprised that Tim Tszyu, at this stage of his career, having his 16th professional fight, not having been really tested to this world-class extent against a fighter who's beaten Manny Pacquiao, gone 9 rounds with Terence Crawford, come back from the dead against Michael Zarafa. It is sort of surprising to see that Jeff Horn is such a big outside. I'd probably have them a lot closer in the betting. I'm not going to say who's going to win the fight because I don't know. I think we could see a 12 knockdown draw in this fight, and I think it's going to be one of those classic boxing events in Australian boxing history. But I think that probably they should be a little bit closer if Jeff is not a favourite in this fight. But that is not to say that Tim Tszyu isn't going to emerge victorious and ride off into the sunset as an absolute superstar and win multiple world titles. So there's no prediction there, but gee, I think we're going to see something special, and I think this is a 50-50 fight if ever we've seen one.